pronunciations. Claire Denis,
हाँ
Agnès Godard,
हाँ
Jean-Paul Fargo,
ओके
or is there any other way of pronouncing? I don't know the writer का second वो जो Fargu, it's Fargeau.
I think it's O because again a bow again I took one semester in French. Do not come at me.
So it's Fargo only, right?
I think so. I think
Okay.
that's how I would pronounce it.
Yeah, because Boca it works similarly then. Then it's
Yeah.
Denis Lavant or Denis Lavant.
Let's just go with Lavant, Suber, and Colin.
Colin.
Let's just
I
not.
mean, I'll probably say Gregoire Colin and Michel Suber. Both of them are fine, but I think it's Denis
Fine.
Lavant only, if from whatever I
Dennis,
know.
yeah.
Lavant, yeah, yeah.
Position. En bas. En haut. En bas. En haut. Milieu. En haut. Milieu. En haut. En bas. En haut. En bas. En haut. Milieu. En haut. Milieu. En bas. Milieu. En bas. Milieu. En bas. En haut.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to today's very special extra episode of this month, which is not anymore an extra, but like a proper full-fledged episode, I think, because we are just gonna use this month as a way of, getting brownie points by talking about cinema. That's how cynical we are with all this stuff. But no, this episode out of everything we've planned actually is the least cynical because we planned it pretty much impromptu, based on Chris liking the film I really like, and then deciding that we can talk about it. Why not? Because it's a film which I think everyone should be talking about, to be very honest. But we will be doing that. As you have noticed, I mentioned Chris. He's a permanent resident for this month, 100%, and then later also, I think. But at least for this month, all the episodes you will be hearing the Spotify, on Spotify at least, are with Chris. So by the time this episode gets out, you would have listened to the first part of the Bollywood queerness in Bollywood episode, and then the second part will come after this discussion. This discussion is about Claire Denis' Beau Travail. Claire Denis is a phenomenal filmmaker. For whoever is not aware, she's a French filmmaker. Um, I'll give basic intro on her. I think just because for whoever isn't aware, I think because she is someone whose name appears in like Cannes Film Festival the most, I feel. And then apart from that, it's sort of your discovery. If you want to discover her work is always there to be discovered. Movie Criterion, whatever, I know none of them are sponsoring us, but these are the places where you can find a Claire Denis film. So you can sort of judge from those platforms what target audience is generally there for Claire Denis. Anyways, she was an assistant director to Mr. Rivet. Rivet is correct. And to Mr. Wim Wenders, who I think recently came out with Perfect Days, which is on movie. You can watch it there. So, she began very much as a high profile assistant director to these very well reputed filmmakers, even at that point in time. And then she sort of went on to make her own films, create, I think, her own style, which I think is, I think one of the reasons why she is so revered in film communities and film critic, like especially critical communities, is because her films are very much her films. You don't get something like a Claire Denis film from other people. Like there's a very distinctive mark to the way she makes films. There's a style to it, which we will be discussing when we discuss Beau Travail, of course. But yeah, I mean, that's the sort of intro. I mean, if you want to look at her English work, which she did recently, you can watch that. I would say that's slightly the weaker work she's done, though there's plenty of messed up stuff in it for you to enjoy. Her French films are, I think, whatever I've seen, are quite extraordinary. And I think a lot of the reason for that is that she situates a lot of the stories as somewhere between autobiographical and, a sort of much more general story. So I think a lot of, so for example, her first film, which is called Chocolat, which is 1988, is a sort of semi autobiographical work where she tells the story of her childhood, where in Cameroon, in Africa, where she actually did grow up in Africa at that point in time. So it's very much her talking about the interpersonal relationships or lack thereof between her as a sort of colonizer at that point in time, and the locals who, and in particular one, their helper, and potentially, and some of it's of course fictional, but there's a romance potentially between her mother in Chocolat and the helper, and then how the sort of, that sort of a central force, and then you kind of see this very moving way of sort of placing herself within, like, I think she's one of the few filmmakers who has the ability, or who's done this very well, of like questioning colonialism in a very unique way. Like, to me, it never feels like she's pandering to tell you that, we are equal, we will. It's actually exactly the opposite of that. A lot of her films are about taking a point of view of a person who's slightly adrift from the land, from the people. And the point of view that she projects is actually one of wanting to get nearer to these people who she thinks she knows, but she also knows that she can't know in actuality, because her experiences put her in a totally different sort of, position in society, even at that point in time and now also. But she's consistently returned in her French work, especially to Africa. And she's talked about, I think there's a film called White Material with Isabelle Huppert, if you want to watch. That's, I think, one of the more clear sort of one of her less elliptical works, if that makes sense. With and But again, you keep on returning back to the African landscape a lot of times, and seeing how she reflects a lot about her anxieties, her memories also, both, and her love, I think, for the country. Because if nothing else, I think there is great love for the country of Africa, or like just continent of Africa, and the the countries wherever the drama takes place. Chris is laughing, which I appreciate. Because I'm using that as a way to correct myself. Anyways, I think for context setup, I think that's a lot about Claire Denis. But there's another form of context I suppose we need to set up for Beau Travail itself, because Beau Travail takes inspiration from Herman Melville's Billy Budd, uh, which is an unfinished novella essentially. 1888, I think, is when he wrote it. It got published in 1924. First, and then there's a lot of, it's known for its chaotic. This is basic Wikipedia reading. Okay, I've not read the thing. I will be reading it. I have it downloaded. But No, I think it's very much that the unfinished nature of it, the roughness, the chaotic nature of the whole prose. I think in this, I think he's consistently. I was reading he's consistently cut out characters, descriptions again and again. Like, you get the roughness is there even within the text, and I think it, as when we will talk properly about Beau Travail, I think we will see that approach sort of being translated there also. But anyways, it's only a loose adaptation of this novel, which is unfinished novel. But then it also draws from her experiences, of course. Then also from Jean-Luc Godard's Les Petit Soldat, I think, which is, I will translate it to English, The Little Soldier, which released in 1963, and it was banned for its subject matter. Essentially, it was because it showed sort of the torture methods used by French and Algerian officials during the French-Algerian War. So I think it wasn't released before 1964 or 65, I think. Anyways, but the reason I mention it is because the narration from that, and one particular character who's central to that, is central also to Beau Travail. this character is Michel Subau's Bruno Forestier. He's got the same name in that and the same name in this. So, it's I think what I was reading was that in The Little Soldier, the ending of it is, sorry, spoilers, is such that you leave this character of Bruno Forestier who's a sort of unknown person in an unknown land in any case. So this one is sort of a natural movement from that to him being a sort of commander here in a position. Again, you because a lot of Beau Travail is about people being in an unknown land without actually having much to do also, it feels like, so I think that sort of translates very naturally from there. And if anyone else is also interested, and after this I will shut up and let Chris talk, this legacy of sort of The Little Soldier, Beau Travail, actually follows through. Weirdly enough, there's this really small film which experimental film I watched at NYFF 2 years back, and it's on Criterion Channel as of now. It's by a German director called Helena Wittmann. It's called Human Flowers of Flesh, and it features Denis Lavant as Galoop in towards the end of the film in Algeria. So it's you find and it's similarly focused a little bit on the Legionnaires and sort of codes of masculinity and all that stuff. I think it's a little too oblique. I think it's a little too. I mean, it's properly slow cinema for whoever is sort of wanting to go into those waters, pun intended, I suppose, for that film, because a lot of that film is centered on water bodies and the sort of the whatever that means. Anyways, my idea is that there's a whole lineage of this sort of film, or which has characters directly going from a film made in 1960s to a film made in 2023. So if you're interested in doing that sort of watch, then please do so. I've not seen the Godard film. I will see that also. Hopefully like it. Hopefully. And anyways, okay. So I will leave the introduction of the film itself to Chris. I think if Chris is comfortable. If not, I will.
Yeah.
I will try and also fill in some of the blanks. But yes.
Yeah, so I am the token gay representation of Queen is Dead for the month. And for those of you who don't know me, my interest is in talking about queer cinema. And if it is not queer, I will make it queer, which is the entire
No,
point
that's
of this.
that you will notice in also the second episode of
The second episode.
queerness in Bollywood. Yes. So yeah.
Yeah. So Beau Travail is honestly a very difficult movie to describe in almost a sense because of how sometimes seemingly disjointed it is. But the basic idea is the film is narrated by a bunch of titles I don't remember. Gallup. Chief.
Here it's written Adjutant Chief Officer Galoop. But
No, in the translation it's I think Chief Sergeant something Gallup.
let's just say he's one position below the commander.
The commandant.
And that a commandant. Okay, but anyways, but that also means that also has some other implication if you want to carry on through that. Yeah.
So he sort of narrates this story that he sort of went through that is set in Djibouti in East Africa. And it follows basically this French legion that was stationed in the country. And I think the best way I can summarize the film is it's a film about an army that doesn't fight. And it's a bit about this dynamic that he develops with this new recruit, basically named how do you pronounce that name? I get confused every time.
Gilles Santan, I think.
Okay, Santan. Basically, he from the very beginning feels this sort of odd feeling about the guy.
Big and menacing. Let's just run with that.
Yeah, what is he? He called it a rancor, I think, in the film.
Okay. I just remember because it's mentioned that I felt something vague and menacing inside me when I saw him. Essentially, that's the whole thing. I think is sort of
the quote is
you are the person who's written all this. Yes.
Yeah, it says deep down, I felt a sort of rancor, a rage brimming, is what he says.
Yeah.
So and it follows what incidences happen between these two characters, as well as the commandant Bruno Forestier, which concludes in Gallup getting
Spoilers.
dishonorably discharged.
I mean,
Yeah, spoiler. I mean, at
yeah,
this
it's very
point.
hard to spoil this film, but yes, for anyone who's not
Uh,
seen it, firstly see it. And if you're not going to see it and just listen to us, then best of luck.
yeah,
Sorry.
so he
Yeah.
gets dishonorably discharged from the Legion,
Yeah.
and it sort of follows then his life after as well. So that is
Sure.
my
Yeah,
very
I think
vague
that's
summary
very
of the film.
no, but I think vagueness is going to be a like a theme of this episode like because we will be describing it also in a some this word somewhat perhaps and all that will be coming back again and again in this because you will the idea of the film I think as Chris has pointed out it rests on the whole film rests on feeling, I think, in general, a feeling that you can't really put into words, a feeling that you can't exactly decipher. You can
And it's also
sort. Hmm.
it's also something that's very fleeting. In
Yeah,
that, when we come to this idea of memory, as we'll talk about it more,
yeah.
but this idea that not only is it something you cannot articulate, but it's almost running away from you.
Yeah.
Just a moment.
No, 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 bro.
Yeah, so sorry,
Mhm.
the idea of it being as you're trying to articulate it almost running away from you.
Yeah,
So it's he sort of there are multiple points where he says there's a dialogue where he says, I am rambling, I am ruminating,
yeah,
I'm unable to in a sense that he's unable to actually put into words
yeah,
what he's feeling, because it's almost like escaping him. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think, I mean, to an unkind way of saying that is that Legion officers are dumb, but that would also imply that would imply a judgment that Claire Denis makes, but I don't think she does. Like, if we say that he's dumb, like, the perception of army people as sort of, all brawn, no sort of, in intellect or whatever, no brain in many senses. But I think there's a genuine, again, Denny, I don't think is generally a person who will judge any person for that matter. And I don't think there's a judgment here. It's just a sort of, I think this is another word which will sort of recur whenever we talk about this film. It has a sort of, well, rhythm to it, right? I think rhythm, which will make a key point at the end, but it has, and I noted it this time, elegantly jagged rhythm, which I think is a way, I think, because you're like sort of seduced by the whole film, but it consistently also keeps on shifting in ways where, like, this is the fourth, fifth time I've watched it, right? And there are images and there are moments where I was like, I don't know still how to feel about them because they feel like they've slipped into either, an alternate universe where like has the film fast forwarded in, it's almost like they're enacting a play where he's playing death and the other people are playing sort of, life in many ways, and they're all holding Sentan to another uh, level in many. And this time I was watching it, I was like, where is this taking place? When is this taking place? Like all this sort of, there's a haze, I think, as we are saying. I think,
Yeah, and also like this idea of basically, so one thing that I wanted, this idea of like the military being dumb, I wanted to come to that because
Mhm.
again, we were having this idea of an artist can justify anything. I think that dumbness is a necessity. Like if you're talking
Mhm.
about a military, it's
Mhm.
supposed to follow instruction, and in
Yeah,
instruction you cannot have independent thought.
yeah.
So in that context,
Mhm.
it is almost necessitated that they are blockheads, that they are brawn over brain, and that sort of an idea. So I think that is something also that, again, like you said, she wouldn't draw judgment. It's almost justified, or at least explained in a way, to me at least, when
Sure,
I read the text of the film.
sure.
But yeah, the other thing that I wanted to point out is I watched this film 3 times in over the course of maybe like 10-11 days because of
Yeah,
you. And the funny thing, or like the surprising thing, is it's sort of so so much is happening which isn't necessarily like causally linked, where it's like it's more a sort of, these are the things that happen, not A led to B led to C, that each watch I would just entirely forget sections of the film.
Yeah.
Even though again it's been 10 days and I've seen it thrice, every time I watched it, I just like remember, I'm like, oh wait, this also happens. Oh,
Yeah.
that, like when you mentioned, when we were discussing earlier, the helicopter crash, I
You
literally
didn't,
watched it this
yeah.
afternoon. I
Yeah.
forgot about it
Yeah.
entirely.
Yeah.
I had to sort of recollect it in that sense. So
Yeah.
it's this idea of it says, it's I always say it's like a free flowing like recollection of things that happened, not necessarily a story being told in a very like sort of traditional
Yeah.
narrative format.
Yeah. And I think very much by design, of course, I think, and very much I think, like, when we were talking in the previous episode about form, narrative, and everything like that, very, in this case, very much a liberation from narrative, like very strict narrative. This is what you call, poetic in its essence only. Like, I don't think the film, like, there is clarity within that poeticism also. Like, I think you can very easily piece together what feelings are being, also, like, you can't describe those feelings, but you can sort of, once the film ends, you are like, oh, okay, so this is what it is about. Within what it is about, it can be hundreds of other things also, which is the other thing, which is the other special thing about it, because I think you had also mentioned that there's just, you can look at it from so many lenses and come out with like different. And I think this is not a case, just to sort of clarify and also defend, I suppose, the film is not a case of vagueness being a a bad thing. I think the vagueness of narrative is not, I think Claire Denis knows what emotions, Claire Denis and Agnès Godard, who shot the film and shot it beautifully, and editor actually Nelly Quetier, because I think all three are working in some other level of sync here, because there is no edit in this movie, which, and if you want, like, a lot of people prefer subtle match cuts and all that. This is filled with matches, contrasts all the way through, and there's nothing which is like, punching you in the face and telling you that this is exactly what you should feel. And that, I think, very much becomes a quality in which the film also impersonates Galoop's feeling, because Galoop is not sure. Galoop is uncertain about stuff, and which I think one of the first, or one of the few lines which sort of he repeats twice, and the film very much almost is, you can star it, is maybe freedom begins with remorse. And he is in a period of remorse. He's alone, he has time to kill, and in that time to kill, and I think anyone actually who has had time to kill and who can reflect on what happened, what, you have the tendency of taking the best of things and maybe finding bad things within it, and then also taking the worst things and sort of reevaluating them a little bit as they were not that bad, like, what was I thinking then,
Yeah, and
that whole thing. Yeah.
yeah, to build off of what you said, in the sense of, it is uncertainty, but it's also a level of denial. It's
Yeah.
a level of rationalization. It's,
Yeah.
Gallup is going through the motions, and he's sort of, saying, I was jealous.
Hmm.
I was a bad person. I
Hmm.
wasn't a good legionnaire. He
Yeah.
says these things, but there's still this constant feeling of he's not entirely able to accept the severity of both the actions and also the emotions.
Yeah.
Obviously there's the concept of the even acknowledging the reality of the emotions, which we'll get to when we get to a queer read.
Yeah.
But even the intensity of the emotions that he's felt, it feels like he's unable to sort of
Yeah.
accept, and he's trying to rationalize it into, oh, I did it because of this, oh, I did it because of
Yeah.
that, not something that is stemmed out of in a sense of sheer irrationality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, I'll go a little bit into the sort of, like, if there are, so if people are wanting us to decode the film, I don't think I'm going to decode it in any sense. but there are, if you see the opening two shots or scenes of the film, not shots, opening two sequences of the film, essentially, it tells you really where the film is positioned in terms of being confident with what it's sort of feeling, but then also then being totally free form and like unconfident about all of this. So basically, the first thing in the film that happens is the camera basically tracks left to right, and you see this somewhat battered wall with like this artwork of soldiers shooting something, and you get a flag of where I think Djibouti's flag only it is, right? So you get that, and it's like very controlled. And whilst the camera is moving, you hear the soldiers' chants, uh, like they sing very confidently, almost proudly, and you get this whole idea that we know where we are, we know what we are watching, and we know who we are watching in one sense, because the subtitles sort of make it clear that legionnaires, this is a sort of legionnaires ka chant in any sense. Hard cut.
Beni orta yerinden çatlatıyor. Ağzımda sakızı şişirip arsız arsız patlatıyor. Biz böyle mi gördük babamızdan, ele güne rezil olduk. Yeni adet gelmiş eski köye bak, dostlar mahvoldu. Seni gidip de kıran, yılanı deliğinden çıkaran, kaderim püskül belam, yakalarsan.
Tarkan, right? He's the Turkish artist whose pop song then, I think at that time, very popular pop song at that point in time. And the film we didn't mention, but it released in 1999. But yeah, Tarkan's song, which is a very, I would like to say, so I told Chris that it's a Mika Singh type song, which basically is like it's a lewd song. Like it feels like it's, um, fairly crass, let's just say that. It's to me it's like the exact opposite of the legionnaires thing, which is all this confidence and honor and all that. This is like totally the other side, where, and then as the case is, when you do contrast, the camera isn't like a tracking shot, it's like handheld, it's cutting between a lot of people. You don't know exactly what's happening. You're in a nightclub. Everything is blurry, unclear. You sort of get an idea of who is there, what is there, but you can't quite make out what's going on. And you don't even know who your main character is at that point in time, because you see many faces. You get this amazing brief shot of the dynamic which might play out between Santan Galoop and his girlfriend, who's
Rahel.
Rahel. Yes, she's the local, one of the, I think, prostitutes working there, right?
Implied, I think.
No, I think I think the prostitute angle is maybe I watched an interview with Claire Denis and she did clearly mention that, but again, the idea is Claire Denis doesn't ever show the sex work actually, which is the other. In fact, if anything, they are the ones in the film who seem most liberated, or especially on the dance floor, because there's this, again, I've seen this the opening so many times that I like remember it now very clearly. It's, of course, there's the first thing where one of the women like gestures a kiss towards someone else. But then when the camera is also looking at other women, one of them looks at the camera and winks towards it, almost like, so you get all this sort of distinction to the whole formality of the first section. And yeah, it's just like riveting to just at that moment, that you are somewhere, again, wherever you have been placed very concretely in the first shot, the second shot sort of totally throws that out of the window. And that's the remorse के साथ जो freedom is stuck between those two things. I feel, those two elements where you get the freedom that Galoop is conflicted between. He doesn't know which side to almost go to. So yeah, I mean, that's my sort of, I know opening scenes is basically something we've been taught in cinema studies to pay special attention to. So but this one, I mean, I've just seen it so many times, the opening, and that song is bloody catchy. So I've listened to it so many times that the images start to then sort of filter through your mind when it's playing, and I'm just like, there's such intensity in that moment of intensity, and even just joy. I feel when she's capturing everyone dancing or having a good time, actually. So and that lack of formality in that space feels so liberating. But then you do see Galoop, who's got a slightly more, again, let's say, restrained as opposed to an expressive demeanor at that point in time. And Sentan also just seems super mysterious. There is no clue as to what he's doing or who he is. So yeah, I
No,
think
because it's like
yeah.
contrasted really well, which you said with that. There's an officer as well that they like zoom, the Legionnaire that they zoom in on, who makes like the kissy face back to the
Yeah.
dancer, and
Hmm.
immediately you cut to Santan, who's just like sort of staring into the middle distance in the middle of the dance floor,
And the
and
lighting is sort of just like, flashing on him because it's a nightclub and you can use the lighting there really well. So
and
yeah.
then the camera sort of like the handheld moves towards Gallup, who's like with the sex worker,
Hmm.
and how he's sort of like, he wants to give in but he's struggling not to, and so it's a really interesting sequence. Like
Also, it
I
doesn't
remember
end on him, which is the other thing.
yeah, it
Like,
doesn't end on him.
the title reveal is weird enough that it cuts at the point when we are at the person who's gesturing a kiss back to the uh, sex worker there. So I think, again, it's just so mysterious in that opening only. I was just like, I don't know what, because sometimes you get an idea at least, right? And then even what follows, just there is no, the clarity is so hazy.
Oh, that the
Djibouti
scene
you are
that
in, right?
yeah, that scene, there's the Djibouti wala scene. The scene after that is one that like I told you, every single time I watch it, it's made me delirious.
Yeah.
Where there's this shot that's basically shot from a boat off
Oh
the
yeah.
shore. And I don't know, it's like a minute plus long, I think.
Yeah,
It's
it's almost
just as
like
like,
they're entering, like in his memory, he's entering the place, almost like he's sort of, lying around there. Yeah.
and because the camera is like in this boat, it sort of rocks
You
and it
rock it.
has its
Yes.
this thing,
Hmm.
and it sort of sees the people in their like natural, one person is like cleaning up, the other one's like
Yeah.
resting, two of them are fishing,
Yeah.
and it just has this rhythm that is it's like simultaneously random but also like very like
Yeah.
trance like, which is like really odd to like because like all three times I watched it, I've almost felt like, I don't know, like hypnotized in that sequence alone.
Yeah.
Which honestly, like for me, and we've talked about this before, but like in today's editing, this
No,
like
yeah, you can't
having
see that. And
having
to be
the
fair, to be
camera.
honest, to just to sort of attend, she is relying a lot on jump cuts, by the way. Like she draws a lot from French New Wave, so she's not someone who's tied to the long take or anything. She cuts fairly rapidly when she needs to. But yeah, when you need to hold it, is I think
No,
where
the
yeah.
entire, again, you're going to kill me for making this comparison, but I
Batao,
was
batao,
talking.
ठीक है.
I watched Bade Miyan Chote Miyan a couple of
Oh
days
my
ago.
God, yeah. Okay, I will. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
And I was just saying, there is a cut every second, it need not, like, doesn't matter what's happening. They're just like talking, and then there's just a cut and another cut, and there's a cut in the middle of the dialogue, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like,
Yeah.
even like the basic shot reverse shot structure is not working properly.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, let the camera just like stay still for, like,
But
let
वो तो
it
उसके लिए
breathe.
content होना चाहिए ना.
So
Like
no,
meaningful
so
or even meaningless, good meaningless. इसमें
okay, I
नहीं
mean,
है
in
वो.
that context, and I'd bring up Jawan because I like that film.
हाँ,
You
you
might
like it,
know.
but yes, I thought उसमें भी cutting was, for me, it was just like I couldn't.
Yeah, so I'm saying udhar to at least content hai, but that's still getting cut up, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Oh yeah.
But
Agreed. Yes. Yeah.
so to get like a better example, but
Uh-huh.
in here, I'm just so not used to people allowing the camera a room to breathe, and in such interesting ways. Like the cinematography is insane. There's
Yeah.
this just one shot that I will never forget. It's when Galoob takes the Legion away from Forestier, and they are in this like volcanic like
Oh yeah,
wasteland.
the wrestling
Yeah,
shot
and so
almost, right? Yeah.
no, this is before. This is when they're clearing it for the first time. He tells them to dig. So
Okay,
you've
okay,
got like
okay.
the top half of the shot is the water body, the sea or
Okay,
whatever.
okay, okay, yeah.
Then you've got this absolute wasteland terrain, and in the
Hmm.
middle you've got these like in really tight short clothes, these like white men,
Yeah.
and it's just, and then when they dig, there's like white sand, like dust coming out of it, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just such a beautifully composed shot. I'm just like,
Hmm.
what is going on here?
Yeah, I mean
It's
it's
insane. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I think I mean Agnès Godard has worked with her in other projects also. Only recently I think she's stopped collaborating or stopped working together. Her other cinematographer is also very good. Not to I think it's Eric Gautier who shot Denis' last 2 3 films, but no, but Godard here is on some other level. I was just like, no, but it's also because it aids the film in such a hypnotic way also. And I feel what you were mentioning about one of the shots for me, because this time I was basically trying to find instances and shots and moments which keep on communicating the idea of confusion within Galoop and this uncertainty. There's this image, a superimposed image of a water body and Galoop writing his notebook, which is something fluid being superimposed with something very concrete in terms of the writing, which I thought was like a wonderful way of just communicating again what the tension in the film between absolute rock solid loyalty to the Legion, but then also wavering beliefs, I suppose, and many wavering. Yes, fine, good. But point to me for that. Uh, but no, no, I think, and then there's the other image I think I mentioned to you, which I was like, wow, why did I not think of this before? Where it's the Legionnaires, because you see some of their routine, right? You see some of their routine, right? Where it's like they're washing or they're no, after washing the clothes they're sort of hanging them on a rope and like clipping them up so that they are like they don't fly away because of the wind. And I was like, that is also at one point in time contrasted with this the his girlfriend putting up the clothes on a similar tightrope, but she isn't like clipping them, she's just automatically just putting them in a sort of unkempt way. And that image of the shirts flying whilst being clipped onto that tightrope is such an evocative image. I was like, why didn't I
And
never
the
think of
color
that?
in it, no,
Yeah,
like you've got this like uniformity of the color, like basically these clothes are nearly indistinguishable,
yeah,
and when she hangs it up there's like all sorts of colors and
yeah.
textures and lengths, and it's here so there's that contrast not only of how but also like the visual language of like even the use of that color is really fascinating.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think just, but again, like I can go through the entire movie and you will find these, you know, contrasting states in mind. Again, these are done very smoothly. I feel like they're established very smoothly. They don't feel like, someone is, like, I hate to dump on this film, but something like Zone of Interest tells you everything for me in the first 10 minutes. कि क्या divide hai between this and that. Here you're just sort of again just trying to figure out, like, and again the way the shots are also composed, there's nothing traditional also about them. You just like it just goes from a moment which seems explosive to then just this total moment of calm, and like you're just like absolutely fine. You go from moments of confession which are totally direct to moments where it's all contemplative. Where he's trying to describe his feelings but you sort of not being able to describe it. And then I think there's Denis Lavant's face, which again, this is another thing which never struck me as significantly before, but this time I was like, he's got like almost rusted cheeks, or it's like someone's hit him and they are sort of, uh, almost wanting to be caressed or like want to be he wants to lie down very gently on someone's lap and sort of, just sleep peacefully there. And this time it was just like every time the film sort of has a close up of him, in moments especially which are in which he's conflicted, I was just like, I didn't notice just how much his face itself encapsulates a lot of the because see, the whole idea is that the all mostly all of the legionnaires there are very uh built, in the sense that it's again the whole, I mean, it's in a Moonlight also a little bit, where you know you jack yourself up in some senses to make a sort of physical barrier out of yourself, like it's the emotional barrier sort of is blocked by that, by the jacked upness of your body, whatever that means. But yeah, I think the whole idea is that, and I think Santan is softer in a sense, not just in terms of the body, but just in general. There's this whole idea that he's slightly more flexible, maybe he's slightly less wedded to this system, because he's also come from somewhere which seemingly is like, there's again all the past is omitted, which I think is always a good thing, because it makes
No,
stuff more
there are a couple
mysterious.
of moments of that where in the beginning, like Gallup says that he says his name and he says this is the name that he gave when signing up for the Legion,
Yeah.
almost as if he doesn't
Hmm.
believe that is
Hmm.
who Santan is.
Santan.
And also
Hmm.
for like there are two moments for me that I remember where like Santa, like three I think for me, that
Hmm.
show Santan as different but still accepted. Is one is when he's teaching the Russian
French.
a soldier, the legionnaire, French.
Hmm.
The other is when they're like bathing almost, where they're like, and there's like a smile on his face where you've got this, like when they're like standing next to each other.
Yeah.
And the third is like they shave his head and then they like rub it and he smiles.
Yeah.
And all this while you contrast it with Gallup, who's alone. He doesn't have
Yeah,
anybody around
he
him.
doesn't speak much at all to the Legionnaire officers at all. Neither does he speak a lot to Michelle Subau's character.
Yeah, first year.
There's a lot of just glancing and a lot of looking, a lot of yeah, a lot of
No,
that memory
there's
also
like
feels so like complicated. Like it doesn't feel like it's all glittery. Like it feels so, yeah, lonely. He feels lonely there also.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
there's this beautiful sequence where they're all shaving, and
Hmm.
you've got Gallup who's like, look, he's alone. He puts on
Hmm.
the shaving cream, and then it cuts
Oh
to
yeah.
all of them together shaving,
Yeah.
and then it comes back, and Forestier is with him, and he
Hmm.
shaves, and then Forestier stays, and then Forestier goes to the Legionnaires, and then he gets the water from Santon, and he
Okay.
this thing, and then Gallup is looking on. So in the sense of like, even the commandant is able to be with the legion,
Yeah.
celebrate with them, and at least entertain them,
I think
engage with
he's,
them.
yeah, I think he's more, if anything, he's at a state in time where maybe he doesn't really care as much as Galoop does of acceptance or anything. Like he feels like he's accepted that there is a sort of, you need to be somewhat fine with stuff that flies against the Legion's order also. Like I know he expels him on those grounds, but he just body language, the way he this is basically, I'm talking about Bruno Forestier's character, that the way he dresses, the way whenever you see him, he doesn't go to the nightclub, which is a interesting detail. But no, otherwise, there's a feeling that he's fine with whatever is going on. He's not entangled in it, but uh, I think Galoop wants both. He wants entanglement, but he doesn't want to also actually
Yeah,
interact. Yeah.
it's that idea of like, again, when we come to a queer reading of it, it's
Hmm.
that idea of sort of accepting that notion of desire. Like if you look, I think again there's a wonderful scene that happens when they're having like a lunch together and they bring like a birthday cake for one
Yes.
of the this
Mm-hmm.
thing, and the entire time in the film, except for one sequence,
Hmm.
Gallup and Santan always like stare at each other. Like it's a
Hmm.
very intense
Yeah.
staring,
Hmm.
while Santan is sitting right next to Gallup and right next to Forestier,
Of
and they're
course. Hmm.
almost stealing glances at each other. Like they won't look at each other directly, but like they'll like, so in the sense of like they both are aware of the game that is being played, But like Gallup is so like steadfast on not accepting it, on being like, think this is the way that things are supposed to be and things are fine, that instead of like be willing to play the game, he's just like, I'm going to stare you down.
Yeah.
So that sort of a thing where there are multiple the hugging,
Oh
the
yeah.
exercise, in that you have got while Gallup is like completely involved in it, he's participating in it, you get a shot of Forrester just like sitting on the side and just looking and just like admiring this male form. So it's that idea of, you've got one person who's reached acceptance, one person who is an utter and sheer denier,
Yeah.
and the other who's sort of navigating, because you've got moments where Sandan is confident, but you've also got moments where he is uncertain. Like there's one sequence where all of them are like, where he says there's a trash can within everyone, and all of them are being like
everyone
loud
sort of loudly dancing or whatever,
and
singing.
drinking.
Yeah, and
And
drinking.
he's just like sitting over there, and he's sort of like staring into the middle distance. And so it's this idea of where Sandan is like, he's aware, but he's still learning to navigate it. Gallup refuses and Forestier embraces. And so it's that confusion also like floats between the three of them in their sort of three states.
Absolutely. I think that makes total sense. But also just generally, I think we can move on to the queer reading of the film also, just in general. I mean, I don't want to say queer reading because I feel the film has always been, I think, positioned as a queer text. I don't know how much Denis herself explicitly associates it as that. Of course, there are tones in it, that is very clear in the way bodies she shoots, she and Godard shoot male bodies in general. Again, that's the whole idea of them exercising itself feeling like a dance, orchestrated dance, gives a totally different meaning to the routine, and everything means that it's all packed in, organized. There's no like flexibility. Dance makes it seem absurd, what they're doing, and adds, just allows you to look at the regimented nature of their exercises in a very different way. You're just like, they're in the daily actions that these very masculine men think are masculine. The camera sort of just twists your gaze, at least. It's just like, look at it this way, it means something else. Also, it can mean both things. I think that's the whole thing, because when they're hugging each other, there is a force to it, which is like very, very key. It's almost like they want to hit each other, but also there's the embrace of it. So you see both sides of it sort of again, everything is a battle of contrasts here in many ways, I think. And then that's how you go.
This idea, okay, so when we come to the sort of queer theory, this side of it, again, I agree that reading is a sort of is like taking away too much from the film. I think a lot of it is pretty pre-baked into the text itself. But this idea of using homoeroticism to critique masculine spaces is a very common thing. It's a very like old thing. Like I was thinking, the film that came to my mind was if you know Point Break, Catherine Bigelow.
I've not seen it, but I've heard a lot and seen it referenced a lot. But yes, it's got it's got homoerotic tension in it, right, between the two leads.
So the entire idea is, it takes the idea of like an action film and it bumps it up to like a 20. So the dialogues, the acting, it's all extremely over the top. It is as macho as macho. It's like macho to the point of this is getting of absurdity. But also with that, it heightens this homoeroticism of like masculine
You've seen
spaces.
Hot Fuzz, right? Or no?
I have not seen Hot Fuzz.
Watch that also then, because it's drawing upon Point Break and Bad Boys, for whatever that.
Yeah, I will.
Make your brother see Hot Fuzz.
I will. Who are the leads in it? I think my brother likes one of them.
Sean Penn. What am I up to? Simon Pegg and Nick Frost.
My brother's a big Simon Pegg fan, so I'll definitely make him watch it. But so this idea, basically, it's that there's this concept called homosociality when we talk about sort of, it's not part of queer theory in general, but in specific, but like this idea of the relationship, non-romantic and non-sexual relationships between men. So that's when you talk about homosociality. And when we talk about homosociality in a patriarchal setup, there is a level of homoeroticism that comes with it. That's this, this idea when we talk about like gym bro culture and all these things, where so much of like, if you look at two men gymming, they are not gymming for the women, they're gymming for each other because they want to, they want to show off their gains to each other. So there is this idea of this almost like attraction that is sort of supreme because also in a patriarchal setup, a woman is less than a man. A man's equal is another man. So it's like, there's a very famous saying when we talk about ancient Greece that the Greeks invented love, the Romans introduced it to women.
Okay.
So this idea where they value the sort of male dynamic so much. And so it's nothing new, but what I like is, again, Denis brings it up to a level of text to me. Like, yes, it's technically subtext, but I don't think it's possible to watch this film and say that there is no queer.
No, absolutely. I mean, I would be surprised if not that, then there are, I mean, again, there are different lenses to it. You can just say it's jealousy, but jealousy about what? About what is, I mean, the other is the colonialist aspect, which I'll delve briefly into after you finish this, but there's not much I can,
I think these lenses coexist. It's not that, you can have the colonialist read, and I think the colonialist reading really plays into the queer reading as well, because it shows their difference, the colonized are the normal here, and that normal is in a sense heterosexual, where he's got this relationship with Rael and that, but his abnormal, in his abnormality, in his irrationality, is this homoerotic with the Legion and with Forestier. So I think that plays into it as well. But basically the reading that I got from it is it starts off as a sort of love triangle, and the film does a great job at always having the three of them shown at all pivotal moments. Every time there's an interaction between Forestier and Galloop, or Forestier and Santan, or Galloop and Santan, the third person is always shown. In this idea of that all three are misfits in this setup. And obviously there's a dialogue, there's only one of them ends up in it, the one who sort of come to terms with this.
Very early on, I think he says that only one of us stayed in the family, or something like that.
And that is the person who has come to terms with this sort of contrasting system of the Legion. And so this idea is that there's a beautiful, I was reading this paper, and they put it beautifully, where it said the requirement to be disciplined in the Legion is to have a reverence and love towards your superior. And that superior love brings a stability to the Legion, which is what is the relationship between the Legionnaires and Galloop. But the admiration that Galloop has for Forestier becomes paradoxically the things that makes him most unstable, because, and this is the piece I'm working on, and the term I call it's the quintessential queer dilemma, which is this saying of, do I want, it comes in two ways, but for Galloop it is, do I want to be him, or do I want to be with him?
Okay.
It's this, why I say in two ways is, if you're aware of your homosexual attraction, it becomes, do I want him, or do I want to be him? In this idea of, do I want to be with him, or am I so envious of him as a person that I I just want to be him, I don't even care about being with him. But for Galloop, it's almost the other way around, where it is he aspires to be liked by like Forestier is liked. He wants to be respected, he wants to be admired, but he's not able to be, and that is a sort of quest. And in a way, he retaliates by being even more rigid, which is his sort of paradox. But he wants to be Forestier, but he's also almost dependent on him, which is an attraction, which is an affection that Forestier doesn't reciprocate. Which is, again, when we talk to the end, he sort of says, you're going to get out. There is no goodbye, there's no farewell, there's no remorse. It's just that you broke the rules, you're leaving. Galloop says, I want you to tell me that you hate me, or that you hate me for doing this. At least utna emotion you show, or you show that level of that, you feel something towards me. And so it starts off as that. And then Santan comes in, and he becomes this sort of, becomes a wedge between the two, where Forestier is clearly interested in him, and they show it in a sort of like sexual almost way where they're like
And I think
stealing
Sentan
glances.
actually is more, you kind of get an impression that he's ambivalent about that also. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, because I think Sentan isn't, again, what you said about this whole idea that you see him with contrasting sort of emotions all the time, right? You have the happiness, of course, but then you have like these long distance stares, which sort of communicate that is he just exploiting me, or is he, like I think there's that angle to it
Yeah,
also. So,
in that idea of he's not particularly averse to it, neither is he particularly like excited by it. It's the sense of,
mm,
like you said, it's a level of ambivalence that, okay,
hmm,
this is there. He sort of also reciprocates the glances just as a by chance. If he's looking at me, I look back at him.
hmm,
But it's very clear that Forestier has a fondness for
yeah,
Santon from the very beginning.
yeah,
And so Gallup is sort of consumed by this, I don't, all consuming jealousy, where he's like,
mm,
I cannot let this happen, because
mm,
also apart from that, Santan is getting a lot of reverence and respect from
yeah,
the other legionnaires, which
mm,
is that night, that sequence where he says, it felt like an omen for what was going to
going to
happen.
come, yeah, yeah,
And he's leading the charge, and you said he gets raised up, and he even
yeah.
like tips his cap to Gallup at the end
That
of
that
it.
to me is definitely like his injection of fantasy within that realm. Like that scene is just so mesmerizingly trippy almost. It's like because he comes close to the car that Forestier is driving, and he's drunk, and he almost sort of falls out of the frame, and then you get this whole where he's dressed in complete black, which is the dress he wears at the end of the film, like in the last dance sequence. So I don't know if that's a chronological thing, or if I don't really care also. Like it's just this
No,
whole idea
so
that it's remains, to me it is also like he's sort of visualizing the foreshadowing what he's making about what
yeah, and also it's also a sequence that sort of depicts Forestier's attitude towards them, no, because he
yeah,
talks about the Legion as his children, and
yeah,
Ali points out that he's like a father figure to them.
mm,
And then when Gallup comes, he's like, doesn't even bother, the car doesn't even stop.
yeah,
It just like he falls to this, but in this they're like blocking his car, and he stops and
mm,
he honks, and then it goes. But here
yeah,
it's just like, yeah, sure, like in that, and then even in that, like, you're like, I'm literally driving a car into you, there is indifference
yeah.
towards that, and also in the
But of
point
course,
of the
like,
black.
we are saying all this, but this is all a reflection of his memory. Like the subjective nature of it will always be there because there's no
No, but
objectivity in some sense.
yeah, but also I think you cannot entirely say that the camera follows Gallup's
No, no, of
perspective, because
course,
there's a
of
lot of it
course.
outside as
I mean,
well.
again, with
But
films, you can't do that. With books, you can because you can
okay,
take, yeah. So yeah,
a point of view, but no, but I
yeah.
think the film is very particular with the shots of the colonized to say that, this is
Oh
not
yeah,
exclusively
there's so many.
Gallup's perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so for me, even that outfit, that black outfit that he wears, there is a sense of order to that as well, because he presses it the same way they press the uniform. It's
Mm,
completely this thing that even in his like civil dress, he is
yeah.
so organized with it.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Yeah, I think, but yeah, I think this whole civility chaos thing is very central to the whole film. I think I think consistently gotten at that aspect only, and as opposed to sort of, and this sort of goes against the grain of your classical narratives, classical filmmaking, and this I think, which is why I think this is such a formally astonishing refutement of a sort of classic drama. Like it feels like it's, and I think this is where we talked about the aesthetics being daring enough in the previous episode, I think, right? In this, it's just like, to me, it's almost, if you want to say, it's almost all aesthetics, but it's almost all aesthetics in a way which is so central to the whole drama, to the film, to and to the queer reading and queer form of it. I think the whole idea, at least what new queer cinema was mentioned in the previous episode, was about a formal daring. I think also just in terms of brashness. This is not brash, but this is very confident in its own dream-like poetic logic. I like it. It will tell, like it will ask of you to accept it, as opposed to reveal it plainly in front of your eyes. So I think that's a very, again, on every fundamental level, I think I do just have a both admiration and love for just being taken by with this film actually. So yeah, I mean,
It's
hmm.
1 minute. I'll just be right back. I wanted to continue from where we were. This thing of it starts off as a jealousy. And then it's where it becomes interesting where, so because of this jealousy, he decides to separate Santan from Forestier. And so he takes them off to this different place. And that is where it turns from jealousy into an envy.
Yeah.
And that distinction, I think, to me is very important, because jealousy is between three people.
Yeah.
So the idea of jealousy is to keep Santan away from Forestier. But in that envy, it again becomes this thing of he wants to be Santan, he wants to be liked by Forestier, he wants to be liked by the Legionnaires. So he's got this strong envy of I don't like what this person I like, or I like what this person is too much that I want to be him, and I want him not to be who he is.
Yeah.
And there is also a level of desire there where he almost gets comfortable in the back and forth that they have, where he likes this dynamic of where he's got someone below him to pick on.
Yeah.
And it's almost like he doesn't want to let go of that, where he becomes comfortable.
Yeah.
And then it's when the thing is Forestier comes back. That's the scene that's very interesting to me, because almost in a way it reflects the scene where he's waking up Rael. Similarly, sort of Forestier like wakes him up. And, yeah, and he sort of comes back into his life, and Galloop is suddenly reminded that, he came here with a reason. And then these sequences happen where the two of them interact a lot, and Galloop is brought back into this seething sort of, and to me it culminates in that sequence where obviously there's the one where the two like fight without fighting, the sequence of the two of them together,
which again looks like cosplay in some senses, like in a evocative way, of course. Like it's the whole pitched between being almost like a play acting sort of thing they're doing to get each other's attention, but then there's, of course, within the expressions within the Benjamin Britten operatic sort of score, even in that it's almost like they are wanting to wrestle whatever connotations that has. So yeah.
So you've got that sequence, and then you've got this scene of Galloop like furiously journaling, where he's like, I will find something about you, I will destroy you. And then it comes to this motive of a compass. So when you talked about uncertainty, to me that shot of that compass spinning
absolutely
is what like comes to my mind.
And the
entirely,
compass is
because
he breaks his compass, right? Moral compass, whatever compass you want to say, like
yeah. I know, even if you leave that, I'm just like, this is something that's supposed to tell you how to find the way.
Exactly.
And then he breaks this most fundamental thing
Yeah.
in a quest for someone to find their way back.
Yeah.
And I was reading this article where someone said that even this idea that Santan is alive at the end is something that can be questioned.
Oh yeah, I thought so in the first place, but then I was like, I can roll with either or. Yeah.
Either, because Galloop says that, he to could have probably escaped to Algeria, as if to say that, as if to sort of rationalize his own guilt. And you think that, did this sequence exist for him to sort of, let himself, accept the fact that, okay, it's okay, he probably survived.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it becomes this idea of Galloop having this, in a queer reading, almost queer desire that he's covering up with this hegemonic heterosexual cisgender masculinity. There's also this idea that Lavant is 5'3" and he's around these massive guys.
Yeah.
And he still looks like the epitome of masculinity in the middle of them, which is absurd.
Yeah.
And again, the one thing is with the camera work, what I like is so this is an interesting comparison of how it frames the male body.
Yeah.
It's not leering, but it's also not self-celebratory as like a lot of masculine like camera work framing masculine people are.
Yeah.
Like in that idea of the action film, like when you think of like a frame of like Salman Khan or someone,
Yeah.
it's not that sort of self-celebratory masculinity.
Yeah.
It's almost a sort of exploratory, or it's like, I want to know what this is like. I want to explore it, and it goes through that.
I think
I
I think the Benjamin Britten score sort of gives it a sort of mythic quality, but then there's this whole idea. I mean, I now that you said it, like I remember also one of the few scenes that there's this edit where he's like, my muscles were rusty. He says are rusty in the present tense. He says that, and then the film just again jump cuts, hard cuts to the past where someone's basically doing the regimen where they are crawling essentially through like a whatever obstacle course you have to go through in that training, and the camera is in a way sort of also wrestling to go through like the person is, and you automatically get this sense of physicality, but you also get a sense of like it's not you put it correctly. Like it's not something where you're like, oh wow, look how jacked up he is. It's more just like he's strong, but there's something also very fragile about that strength. I feel right. Like that's how
and
also the movement, the camera tracking that movement sort of gives you that feeling also. Yeah.
and also like there's a big connection between, like if you talk about in real life, between queerness and the military, because if you
Mm-hmm.
actually read a lot of experiences of trans women in
Mm-hmm.
particular, they have the tendency, a lot of them end up signing for the military as like a last ditch attempt to sort of salvage, or at least try to come to terms with their masculinity, because
Mm-hmm.
there isn't a more masculine, quote unquote masculine space
Mm-hmm.
than the military. But you're saying that even within them, or maybe especially within them, there lies the homoerotic and this sort of
Yeah.
um almost unspoken desire between these
Mm.
men or these people, that is to me, the beauty is that you're using fixed conventions, like again, like I
Yeah.
said, using homoeroticism to critique masculinity is
Mm.
not a new thing. But to actually be brave enough to tell a story that will inevitably be read as queer,
Mm.
and sort of embrace it in
Mm-hmm.
both, in the way that if you read it just as non-queer but as queer as well, is something that I genuinely do admire
Yeah.
in the way that it is structured.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Yeah, and I think again, I think we've talked about a lot of the things, and I think whatever specifics we've mentioned sort of do return back to a lot of, and I feel that's the biggest triumph of the film for me is taking those conventions and then spinning them in a way where you look at them totally differently. Whereas just like, and this is what I said, even, I mean, I'm not the biggest Challengers fan. Like I like it, but I didn't love it. But even I remember saying that to in a quick chat. I think I was like, if a filmmaker is able to show you something you think isn't that, but convince you that it might actually be something totally different to what you think it is, that's the biggest praise I think you can give a filmmaker. Like if they are able to convince you that the super masculine, um, military regime within its codes is itself chaotic in its sort of uh, desires and connections and everything. Like it's such a electric film in that sense. Like just it feels like it's consistently shifting gears in a way where you're totally just at a loss. Like still I'm just like, there are again this time there was that scene with the where he's at the nightclub and he's looking, I think he's almost dreaming and seeing Rahel's face being lit up by different sort of colors, and then that scene automatically then cuts to two bodies swimming in the two male bodies swimming inside, like together in the water. I'm just like, there are these moments where you think, either is this associative editing, which is basically like, is she just going from one, like implying one thing leads to another, or is it just a sort of just a normal cut? Like that's how you are cutting from live, like, but yeah, that arrhythmic quality is the, like the arrhythmic quality is the rhythm of the film in many senses to me. Like the
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I think defying conventions is also, I don't want to call it subversion, because it's like, I think, too overused, but in the
yeah.
sense of when you talk about, defying the codes of form, even, when we talk about like homosexuality, it's looked at as a deviance. It is looked
Yes.
as something that is not normative.
Yeah.
So to have this film that is so structurally non-normative, and then also to embrace this sort of queerness that is non-normative,
Yeah.
and to talk about the homoeroticism in masculine spaces, which may be normative, but talking about it is not normative. I think
Yeah.
that to me is what encapsulates Beau Travail the most, because it even defies your fundamental expectations from a film. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you might have better knowledge because you watch so much more, global cinema,
That
and have so
doesn't
much
mean
more.
anything, but yeah.
No, but like, as I would consider myself more closer to like an average movie
Hmm.
watcher who watches like the big films and maybe one odd
Hmm.
avant-garde films here and there.
Hmm.
For me, it was genuinely like asking me to it was genuinely challenging me. It was like, here is a bunch of almost disparate images. Like, there's
Hmm.
another sequence that comes to me where we said, they were being super loud, and it's immediately cut with two of them like fighting
Fine.
bloody murder
Oh, yeah,
with
yeah,
each
yeah.
other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's
And
true.
there's one, and then there's another where he leaves the I'm forgetting the character's name. I think Combo or something the character's name is. He leaves the post,
Oh,
and then he goes
yes.
and sits in a prayer.
I
And
think it's
you're
Ramadan time, so he's sort
yeah,
of,
it's Ramzan time,
yeah,
and he's sitting in the night prayers.
yeah,
And you've got this sequence of like Santa and at the post alone,
hmm.
Gallup in his like barrack alone, and him in this prayer, and these contrasts that she
Yeah,
sort of makes,
yeah, and
where
then
it's just like,
that's how he uses that as a ploy to trap Santa and Benny senses. So yeah.
yeah. But so this idea
Also, there
of
is
like,
this. Oh, sorry. Also, there's this
no,
moment
no, please.
in during this particular sequence where he's like, "You're no longer African/black now.
Yeah.
You are part of the Legion," which I think is the other sort of, uh,
Yeah, and,
very.
and that was
Mm.
actually something where I was reading in, again, I don't like Freud, but apparently researchers who are into this film want to talk about Freud a lot. But they
Okay.
basically, when I talked about the difference between like desire and envy,
Yeah.
they talk about this idea of fetishism versus envy. And in that fetishism, they say that one of the key things that you require for the fetishism is an indifference towards difference. So
Yeah.
it's this idea where to be able to fetishize the Legion or have them at a similar level,
Yeah.
their differences have to fall apart. So they have to be Legionnaires before they are Africans.
Sure.
So Gallup, even though like that officer isn't doing anything,
Hmm.
Gallup is almost afraid that he will. So that's because he wants Anton to step up. So he almost preemptively says, you are not African anymore. You are
Yeah.
a Legionnaire.
Hmm.
It is, I know that you are different, but still you are part of us, or you are still this first.
Hmm.
That sort of captures this scene. So from like I love that this conversation is so disjointed, because it's almost like the way that the film, I mean, to be a bit pretentious, but it's how the
I
film
don't
is
think
almost
it's
structured
disjointed,
where,
to be honest, but okay.
no, not disjointed in the sense of like, in the sense of it's not like it's like not like a traditional narrative, cause effect, or
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, of
this
course.
scene leads to
Hmm.
the next
But you
structure.
can't talk
It's
about this film in that way, I feel, unless you want to do like a ending explained sort of. But we are not doing that. We will talk
which
about the
which
ending,
we
but because the
which
ending is
we have
mad,
bitched
which is
about ending explained videos a lot in our DMs.
yeah. I think we are not
Yeah,
going. I
but
mean, I know our standards can stoop down quite a bit when we are discussing films, and the way we discuss films. Example, our live stream on Hitman. But we won't stoop that low. Don't worry. Ending
so
explained. जब
yeah.
अगर ending explained यहाँ पे आ गया तो मैं निकल जाऊंगा. Basically what I'm saying.
No, but I think we can talk about those two ending sequences. One being his
Oh my God.
the hotel scene, and then the ending.
Hotel scene.
So
House
the
scene.
is it? I thought it was supposed to be in like a hotel. Is it supposed to be his house?
In Marseille, I think it's house only.
It's house
Yeah.
only. Okay,
It
I
doesn't
don't know.
matter. It's
Maybe
impersonal
the
enough to be
yeah,
either or, so it doesn't. Yeah,
either or. So there is
yeah,
a sequence with a bed in it, and then there is a sequence with a nightclub in it.
yeah.
And let's hear your thoughts first. I've been rambling too much.
No, I mean, what to say about? I mean, I think anyone who doesn't, who even has some skeptical, so who has expressed expressed skepticism about this film, everyone is pretty much universally a big fan of the ending. People who love the film say it's maybe or possibly is one of the great endings in cinema, in general, or partially also because of Denis Lavant's performance, partially I think also just because of the scene that precedes it and how it sort of plays in conjunction to that. But no, I just think the whole sequence before the nightclub itself is so sad in a way. It's this whole idea of having discussed your life in such a fractured, fragmented way and sort of had that uh, time to kill essentially that part of you. Um, you are still bound by the regiment. You're bound by the need to iron everything out, to have everything arranged, to, sleep in a way where it doesn't feel like, where it feels like lying down itself is a military, like not in the sexual sexual connotation way, but in general, I think there's this stiffness, I think, to every movement, right? So I think, and just then, of course, this is Denis being Denis because she is the one who uses parts of the body, or just uses elements of shots, close-ups of shots to convey whatever, a world of meanings. And because she see, the conventional ending in this is he lies down, he takes the gun, shoots himself, you hear the shot, probably cuts to black. Here you get him saying stuff. What does he say towards the end?
He reads the tattoo that on his chest, and it says, "Serve the good cause and die."
Yeah. So he says that almost, uh, and like it seems like they are his final words in that sense. But then you see the gun sort of lying on top of his chest. Then rather than cutting to anything, you cut to his bicep, which has a tiny vein, which sort of signifies that he's still alive. Uh, but it sort of then directly from that moment cuts to the nightclub. And I think it's I don't think any filmmaker does this. Okay. Like, I don't think any filmmaker firstly has the intuitiveness to do it or the guts to pull this off. Because when she does and that, as you said, the image of that vein within that body part just sort of pulsating, you don't, it's probably like, is that something that he wants to stop? I mean, at that point, yes, but then there's also the sense, because it then cuts to the rhythm of the night. It's almost like, has it matched the rhythm of the dance that he's going to uh partake in now? And it's just, again, it's memorable. These things are what make her movie so memorable in many ways. Like, I can't forget either the cut or either the images. So, and they'll keep on popping in your head, like, just throughout the day. Like, to me, it's just like sometimes one image comes through and just, and then it goes away also, but like it just has a ability to linger. And then, of course, the dance is magnificent, not just in terms of performance, but even I like how the contradictions are still maintained in that dance, actually, because your camera is static, your nightclub is empty, which is the other thing. You can only see him. Finally, he's got the attention, but there's probably no one to watch. Everyone's leaving. But even there's that hesitance in the beginning to start dancing. It's just like, he almost starts dancing and then realizes that, no, I can't. And then it's just almost like, maybe you take that implication as he's probably pulled the trigger. And it's after that where maybe it's just absolutely uncontrolled sort of, body movement. And it's like someone has, taken out the whole body has been so wound up that's one moment where he just breaks free. And it's both liberating and desperately sad, I think, because it's almost like only death can liberate him as much. And I find it like, yeah, I love that contradiction. And I think, uh, yeah, I mean, again, define very much, you can't forget things like this, the way the director shows it, as opposed to, this is an ending which in theory, in writing, is simple to do in terms of, you're charting a character arc in many ways, and you can, position it as that. But the way the images show it to you is just hypnotic, mesmerizing, whatever adjective you want to throw.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
yeah.
I think for me, like you said, no, I think what is devastating more is that final sequence is somehow sadder than that entire thing that came before it. Where
Hmm.
like watching him dance feels so much more devastating than seeing him prepare to kill himself. Like
Yeah.
that is a contrast that bloody only some
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
out of some like strange artistic minds.
Hmm.
And for me, I see it slightly differently in the sense of like,
Hmm.
again, agree in the sense of that, you've got this very clinical where he's like living out the last of his life. He's almost like grasping at his
Hmm.
legion days. And for
You
me,
get a
instead of
flash, almost like a flash image of the, like a legion also taking a photo together, I think. Or,
yeah, and if you see, there's no Santa in that photo. It's just him,
hmm.
Forestier, and the rest.
Everyone
I
else.
made sure I checked. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah. So for me, so it's this idea for me, less than that he's killing time. It's like he's got a like you said, he's got a timer, and he's like
Yeah.
he's watching it run down.
Yeah.
And he's like, this, like, recounting this memory is the last thing that I've got left.
Yeah.
And once this is gone, it's my last connection. Like for him, the Legion was his life. He
Yes.
doesn't
Hmm.
have an existence outside of the Legion.
Yeah.
So once he's lost or recounted the memory or written down the memory of the Legion as well, what else? What other good cause is left for him to serve before he dies?
Yeah.
So it's that idea of, even in that ritual of making the bed, he's
Hmm.
buying just a couple of more moments of
Minutes.
that time.
Yeah,
As
interesting.
he sort of, and then he lies down and he very careful, he gently puts that on his, like on his sternum, and he puts that gun on him.
Hmm.
And it's almost like you said, it's almost like a military this thing in the way that he lies down, and it's almost like, even to lie down is to not be doing the military's work, or to
Yeah.
be taking a break is to
Yeah.
define, you should be doing your routine instead. Why are you doing
Yeah.
this? Almost that sort of thing. And then it zooms in on his tattoo, and that muscle twitching, it just, I mentioned this to you the first time as well.
Yeah.
I was I was genuinely like mind blown. Just like, what a smartly and what a
Yeah.
beautifully framed shot, and an idea, something so
Hmm.
simple, like you said. It's a signifier of a life, of the life still in him.
Hmm.
It's almost a rhythm mirroring what will come after this.
Yeah.
And then when it hard for me, it's not that when he has a moment of attention, but there's no one to see it.
Hmm.
For me, it is, he cannot perform
In
under
front.
attention.
Sure.
He needs to be in that isolation to finally allow himself the room to be anything more than that legionnaire.
Yeah.
And or other than that legionnaire. And particularly in that hesitance, if you see, one thing is, it's almost like he has a partner. He
Hmm.
actually pauses after the hesitance is gone as well.
Hmm.
He sort of waits, he kneels on one leg and he's almost on one knee, and he's like waiting for the other. So it's like he wants company,
Hmm.
he wants that recognition, but he's incapable, like
Yeah.
physically, emotionally,
Hmm.
psychologically incapable of dealing with it, of knowing
Mhm.
how to this. So in his quote unquote company itself, he is lonely, or
Yeah.
he needs to be lonely to experience even the emotional possibility of company.
Absolutely. No.
And so in
Hmm.
that moment, it just, like you said, it's like, like popping a cork. It all comes like bursting out of him.
Yeah.
And again, I think the cut to the credits is
And the
also
credits are also
good.
amazingly done, because it's not like a traditional credits are falling into place. It's like
Yes.
they are like, it's like the nightclub ka lights only.
Right.
Like, some of them are blinking. Like, it also unfurls in like different. The alignment is different. Like, once the
It's like a
center
random
ones, then
order,
this,
and
this, this. I was like, I mean, what to say? Like, but
yeah,
then it cuts back, of course, and then
but
then the dance is even more violent in one sense, because he's basically, yeah,
yeah,
torpedoing almost. Like, what?
yeah. So
Yeah.
so for me, it's that moment of like
Mm.
the fact that you're able to make a dance to Rhythm of the Night
Mm.
feels sadder than this sequence
Mm.
of utter silence where he's like folding this thing. And again, it's a scene with a lot of jump cuts in it where he sort of goes through this process. That is what like truly like I again I don't know because maybe I've not been exposed to that much later, but I don't think I've seen a better ending for a
I
film
think a lot of
in
people. I mean,
language.
I don't know if I can make that claim. I'm sure something or the other pops in your head sometimes. It's not, but it is definitely one of the. But I don't. Yeah, but I think what I didn't want this episode to be is an extensive discussion just on that, because I know a lot of people have already discussed the ending a lot. So I hope we've contributed otherwise also to this discussion. I think we have. I mean, again, this is also coming from a place where I've been desperate to talk about this film on like a proper platform, and I think talking is the way in which I would want to keep my relationship with this film. As I mentioned, I can't pin it down to words as much as of now. Whatever repeated stuff that's probably started to annoy people now, because I've mentioned it about 4 or 5 times on my story. But yeah, you will get another one of those, or two more. Hopefully, maybe I'll do a post. Maybe the post thing might work. I don't know what to highlight because there's impossible in I don't know क्या पूरी picture कोई highlight कर सकता है.
No,
I
I
don't
think
think I can.
this is one of those films that you can just keep revisiting. You can
Yeah.
write like I said, I wrote 9 pages worth of notes
Mm.
just analyzing the
The
queer
queer. Mm.
signifiers
If,
in this
if
film.
if people are more interested in sort of the colonial aspects of it, or post-colonial at least, because that's a lot of things which link a lot to Denis' other work, I would suggest watching her other work and then also coming back to this. This is tangentially connected. Other works of hers are very directly related, mostly to post-colonialism and just in general colonialism also. And I think she is definitely one of the filmmakers who, I always think about how do you represent the other in many ways. And I feel she's one of the glorious examples, I think, of doing that. Because in her films, you get an acknowledgement of the fact that she isn't one of them, which is true for her. But it's also always this sense, and I forget the dialogue. There's something in Chocolat essentially where it's basically like the closer you get, the horizon line which you see between the closer you get to it, the further it moves away. So it's this whole idea of feeling I think that's a lot of her films actually are about feeling displaced, because she has probably felt that a lot in her life, which sort of the way she channels it in different stories and different contexts has just been sublime, I think. So Beau Travail is probably, and not probably, Beau Travail is the best example, I think, of that. If we have convinced you to watch it, or if you think we have talked good enough stuff about it, if there are stuff you want to disagree with us about, you can be like, maybe we are overreading it. Fine, tell me how to underread it. See, I'm not being rude here. I'm just being, if we are overreading it, I want to know how to underread it, because
They do be yapping too much.
I don't care about that. See, yapping to hoegi, but no. See, I'll be very honest. I'll mention it as a asterisk whenever I am on the episodes at least. I would rather have overreading than underreading, and I've said that a lot. And if we are I don't think. Firstly, in this case, too, we are not overreading. I think 100%. But in general, if you think we are overreading, I mean, again, please express it to us in a way where I am convinced. Because see, the thing is, a lot of times when I overread, I myself acknowledge it. This happened with Haseen Dilruba essentially for me, where I was, by the time I was writing my last paragraph of the review, I was like, I know I've overread the film, because I know the film it doesn't have everything which I've sort of, picked up otherwise. Beau Travail is not that. Firstly, yes. Sorry, I apologize sincerely to Claire Denis for even mentioning those films in the same
I've made worse
sentence. But
comparisons,
you've
don't
made worse.
worry.
So, yes, you are the bigger culprit that way in this episode. But Anyways, yeah. If
And
also,
the over.
hmm.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I was about to say that if Chris wants to, maybe in October, Halloween time, we will discuss her other film which he's watched and he really liked, also, which is a vampire film, I suppose. Uh,
Is it would you call it
uh,
vampirism? I mean,
Cannibal, vampire, people eating each
no,
other.
because cannibalism is my genre.
Okay,
I will not let you.
fine, not vampire, then cannibalism also, or like whatever. But again, it's a lot of focus on bodies again. It's about how expressions of love versus expressions of sex in many ways. But yeah, it's we should discuss it as part of
Let me
one of
see
the
if
Halloween
I can
movies,
convince you to watch Hannibal. That will be the
not the TV
fun.
show.
The TV show.
No, उतना नहीं होएगा. I'm sorry. Like picture करोगे recommend, I will happily watch.
Well,
TV shows
picture, the
too
only
much
other picture
commitment.
I know you will suffer through is Bones and all.
Oh my God, no, not that. But I'll suggest you another one which is better. Called Raw. Have you seen Raw?
No.
French film also. That's a coming of age cannibal film. So whatever that means.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I'll watch it. No, but what the overreading bit I just wanted to say is, you say you are self-aware when you overread. I am sort of extremely averse to the idea, for me personally, the idea of overreading, because I'm just like, I don't want to disrespect the artist by like inserting my own like not very smart 2 cents into it, which is why like before this episode I read through a bunch of papers and I did a bunch just to make
You
sure
said to
that
confirm sort of, yeah. No, but I think with when you're doing a sort of film criticism, sort of that line of thinking, I think your, or at least whatever little I've learned, it's mainly been predicated on the fact that, it's not the filmmaker's film after you watch it. It is also yours. So please draw your, and again, I am a very, I think, basic person in that sense. So I don't have the intellect also to draw a lot. I think so. The picture में जितना होएगा मैं उतना ही ज्यादा करके लूंगा. And I've seen this too many times to, I mean, again, I think it's very much, I mean, I'm not even going to, tiptoe around the word, but yeah, very much a bona fide masterpiece of a film. So I think, I can watch it forever and ever, and I can never get it wholly, and I don't ever want to get it wholly, because that's how you sort of feel through the film in many ways. But yes, this is the gushiest episode you will get about a film, I think, in a long time, because uh, I am certain that the coming months will not give you gushiness in terms of films, if we especially covering live stream things. In these episodes, yes, you will probably get gushy stuff, because this is the stuff we like to discuss. लाइव स्ट्रीम हमें करना पड़ता है लोगों को पहुंचने के लिए. So
next
uh,
week also we're going to be doing plenty of gushing.
हाँ, बट उसमें गालियां मुझे फिर दूसरी जगह से मिलेंगी ना. इसमें तो कोई गाली भी नहीं दे सकता, बिकॉज उन्होंने पिक्चर ही नहीं देखी है. So yeah,
No,
anyway.
they can redirect their galis to me. I'll take it. Don't worry. Let them know.
Perfect. I think I will in this case. But yes, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to our extra episode, which is definitely much shorter than our normal episode. But I hope you did like that episode also, because I've heard it now and I think it's quite lovely. And this episode hopefully is similarly so for you. Please tell us other film suggestions, maybe that are like Beau Travail, that maybe we've not seen. If you discover me something like Beau Travail, I might actually, I don't know what actually, and let me not promise anything, but I will watch whatever movie you want to say after that. If you show me a movie like that, like even if you are being cruel and you make me want to watch like Bade Miyan Chote Miyan, I will watch it. Like that way. So आपको but वो recommendation उतनी अच्छी होनी चाहिए जितनी वो picture बुरी है. So that level needs to match up. But anyways, that's about it. I think what's upcoming. Next live stream, as I think we mentioned the previous one also, is going to be about Oh, no, this will happen after the Inside Out one comes out. So you've probably heard that also. Hopefully that movie's good. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. You can follow. I don't want to mention everything. We mentioned it in the previous episode. Everything will be in the descriptions. You can follow us at queenisdead.film podcast on Instagram. Instagram handles for each of our accounts, letterboxd handles for each of our accounts, and Twitter handle for Chris's account will be there. I refuse to be on that cesspool. But anyways, thank you so much, and thank you, Chris, for this episode wasn't escaping this. Thank you for the beautiful work on this episode.
The rhythm of the night. This is the rhythm of my life.